The Nectar of Devotion by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Chapter 28, Other Ecstatic Symptoms. We can think of moistening, drying, heating up, or cooling down. We can think of the clouds that are specially seen. We can think of things clearing up. We can think of the appearance or disappearance of anger. When certain things happen in connection with the spiritual life, they have an added dimension to it. Because people talk about, oh, you're just getting high or turned on or something, and it's different than that. Or that is different in the context of spiritual service. There is the freeze, the flight and fight responses. The devotee should be trying to see how things cause a reaction within and without, particularly those things that are connected to the spiritual service. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:13-51 reminds of how one can be stopped in one's tracks, and plans can change when you witness other devotees, when there is a reuniting of the community. This is even when it's not too long in between. Sometimes our sense of heat and cold have nothing to do with the temperature. Sometimes sweating or other such reactions have nothing to do with the material physical conditions about. Sometimes we will notice of these things in the spiritual beings that take part in the spiritual flights and other incidences that we may come apart hearing or may actually experience some of ourselves. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:39 reminds us that the earth will bear witness. The earth is going to witness. And the earth appreciates the sent ones. Sometimes the ability to speak comes or is taken away as a result. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:13-59 remembers that after going through the movements, we need to regard the words and the change. In the 10th canto, 39th chapter, 48th verse, there can be a showing of the different spiritual planets and how those that need to express certain things will get the tools to do such. And we should not let our joking cause grief to us or anyone else. Some people in some behaviors are not the ones to draw near. Now, you may see an adding or subtracting of bodily color. Some of this is psychic or spiritual phenomenon, but certainly there are some things that happen to the physical bodies. And there's different types of crying too. If you're practiced, you will start to experience regular tears as part of your worship. Now, that doesn't mean that you push through the pain and don't function and have other people take care of you because you're kneeling and stuff too much. You should figure out what your limits are, that you do some, but, or whatever else the issue may be. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:68-23 reminds us that it is okay to be upset about the possibilities of deprivation of spiritual experience. And if we're going through the practices or through the remembrance, don't worry about the smearing of clay or perfumed powder or any of that other stuff that people may have, especially not the mirror makeup. That's Srimad Bhagavatam 10:39-14. We should meditate beyond the senses. We should redirect our senses as part of our meditation. And sometimes we just give up and then things happen. Now, some things I would say are more significant with others. And don't worry about which particular physical occurrence results, what psychological event. The symptoms that you need or that others need by your example, they will occur if they're allowed to occur. Sometimes people will hear, they won't quite even understand. But they'll still experience. When one experiences of them all, it's called the Mahabhava. And the divisions of these are called the Sattva Bhasa. When you go from place to place, you should start to realize the difference with what goes on. That there is a difference of the presence of one place from another. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:51-29. We are reminded not to let our relationships and our sense of attachment in other ways to the material life keep between our indulgence in the spiritual atmosphere. Now, we need to get past such things as mere disappointment, but it's natural to lament our lack of physical ability, our lack of mental ability, our lack of achieving our spiritual goals, even if we are on the right path in that way. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-9 reminds us to acknowledge the independence of divinity, but how we witness unto divinity through the different powers of the world, and to draw a humility unto ourselves by realizing our comparative insignificance. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:51-39 reminds us that some things lack in their ability to satisfy, and that we should be aware of having done some bad things in the past. But we are turning towards being perfected individuals in the future. I'm not delaying the process either. We're at least starting with something, right? Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-10. Our birth is a product of passion. That's definitely true. But pride, particularly this, oh, I desire it, so it must be okay for me to do what I think I can do according to my desire, that's something to get rid of, right? If we're a servant of divinity, then, there's not so much of a worry when it comes to some of those symptoms, right? And guilt, just like shame and fear, is one of our strongest drives. But guilt is dealt with, or it should be dealt with, by just turning towards what's best. Turning your consciousness in such things as Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. For some, it may be the decoration. I try in these videos to include an animal or something as a decoration, or considering it as, you could say, as an offering through its presence. You don't have to kill every animal of the forest or every plant or whatever. You leave it as is and dedicate your acknowledgement of its presence. And sometimes you become worn out. Sometimes this is explainable, sometimes this isn't. But just like anything else, it can be turned towards the principles and consciousness that you are trying to achieve spiritually. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-20 reminds us that various physical actions and embraces and all that sort of stuff impacts the body and the things associated with the various people's bodies involved. And part of the point of some of the rasas is that just giving over their energy to the point where their bodies just, give up. Now, some people have turned to what's called sorcery. I mean, real sorcery. They're ritual drug use. Of course, alcohol is the most common one, but, for those who have to take medicine, for example, that perhaps might be the way that they address with that. But sometimes there's things that are even good for you that if you overdo it, it can cause problems. I've seen challenges online of people too much sugar and particular junk food or too much hot spice, just ridiculous levels of hotness with peppers to the point where they have reactions and go to the hospitals and stuff like this. It's like, this is not the point. But whatever occurs, you can, take that opportunity to direct it or your response to it. Now, there's obligation, but there is a sense of supremacy that comes for a path. And if it's not some, oh, I was just put in a different position than you sort of stuff, if it's actually because you have this sense of being pleased with what's right and stuff, you're not proud, you're not full of pride, but, that word can be used to people who don't quite know how to express it or haven't quite reached that point where it's, refined. Because as we previously mentioned, there's humility. So our words pride and arrogance and proud and stuff include that. So that's not really what we're talking about, because we're not supposed to have these things in conflict with each other, right? The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:27 reminds us to purify our feelings of friendship towards those who are devotees, to work towards dealing with the common enemies. Acknowledge the superiority of what is beyond cause and effect. And if you're going to doubt, you can doubt other things outside. Certainly you want to indulge your understanding and one's relationship will affect your sense of aversion or disassociation. It will instruct you not just in commandments of do this or don't do that. It will instruct you in a sense of methodology. And emotions can become extreme, but then again, it won't be like a manic episode or any other such thing. Although people who don't understand can't tell the difference between mental illness and the spiritual states. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:23-13 reminds us that our sense of spouses and such should be included towards these things. And sometimes we need to hold off on judgment about why people do things, particularly if only our sense is, this is a shocking thing in our society, right? The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:25-11 reminds us that sometimes the sent ones, the avatars, they had certain miracles about them. The environment, the waters and winds and earth actually moved to respond. The Lalita Madhava reminds the sense of our parent-child relationships, how those are likewise redirected as part of the spiritual relationship. Now, that fourth stage of love, that socially inappropriate level, whether it's what you have or what you don't have, different forgetfulnesses, like Srimad Bhagavatam 10:12-41 reminds that despite sickness and old age, some will still have the experience. Some may know my health has not been so bad, so good at times, and I still can have some amazing experiences in the midst of that. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:34 reminds us to live the spiritual life in absence of the direct presence or the knowledge of the direct presence. And whatever encouraging physical